Hey y'all, welcome to In Hope. Hope this finds you well and that this would be a word of hope to you today. And if you're watching this on May 6th, on Wednesday, happy birthday, First Pres. Our church was founded 200 years ago today. We celebrated in church this past Sunday, or in worship this past Sunday, and we will celebrate whenever it is safe to get together again. Speaking of church, this past Sunday, I don't know if you saw it, but there was part of that service that drove me crazy. I was so frustrated. So, we're having our bicentennial Sunday, and I'm preaching this sermon about how great and wonderful and faithful God has been, and I sort of crescendo up, I conclude the sermon, and then we're going to sing Great is Thy Faithfulness, just a wonderful hymn, and we switch to the view of the previously recorded time in which we sang that hymn, and there's like 14 people in church that day, and I'm like, oh man, why did we choose that Sunday to show? It's always something. But, the reality is we have Sundays like that. There are times, whether it's attendance or other ways, where we're not hitting on all cylinders. And it can be tempting on days like that to kind of get down or frustrated. And then especially if you drive home and pass some other church with a full parking lot, it's easy to get down. And it's even easier to get down when you start comparing our church to one of these new churches, one of these new churches that just pop up and just explode everywhere. And I want to say, no, that's not fair. That is not a fair comparison, especially when it's one of these non-denominational churches. I'm thinking they don't have the traditions and the institution and the denominational baggage that we have to carry around. I mean, our church could be a little bit more nimble, a little more modern, if we didn't have 200 years of history hanging around our neck. But then in my better moments, on days like today, for instance, I stop and I think to myself, 200 years. Wow. That's a lot of sermons preached. That's a lot of songs of praise sung. That's a lot of children treasured. That's a lot of older folks honored. That's a lot of hungry mouths fed. That's a lot of souls nurtured. And that's a lot of lives changed forever. And then I'm filled with pride to be a part of a church that's 200 years old. In Ecclesiastes chapter 3, we hear these words: "For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to throw away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to throw away. A time to tear, and a time to sow. A time to keep silence, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time for war, and a time for peace. The grass withers and the flower fades, but the word of our God endures forever." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Our church has been through every single one of those seasons multiple times in 200 years. This isn't our first rodeo. This isn't our first time around the block. Now, we might not be traveling in the fastest or the flashiest way, but we are a part of a tradition that has been making a difference for God, for good, in this community and beyond it for 200 years. Now, we're not perfect. We are not perfect. And credit for the good things that have gone on goes to God, not us. But being a part of a church that's 200 years old can and should be a source of great pride. Now, I don't know about you, but being a part of a church that's 200 years old and still going strong, for me, that's also a source of great hope. And I think it should be hopeful to you as well. And isn't hope what we need in these days? So, First Pres, happy birthday. Thanks be to God. So that's in hope for today. So I charge you, having heard a word of hope, be hopeful and be hope to someone else today. Thanks. Y'all take care and God bless.